Whether it's your first or 10th visit to Disneyland Paris, these are some mistakes that you can avoid making if you want to have the best time. Hi everyone, how's life? As somebody who's been to Disneyland Paris way too many times, I mean it's honestly countless times now. I couldn't even tell you how many times I've been going since I was a child. I'm very, very lucky. But something that I've noticed over my many visits to Disneyland Paris is that a lot of people make some very common mistakes on their first visits to Disneyland Paris. And it doesn't even have to necessarily be their first visit. Some people I've seen make these mistakes continuously, like every time they go. So in this video, I want to share with you some very common mistakes that I've noticed people make when they visit Disneyland Paris that are definitely avoidable, and hopefully by me sharing them you will be able to not make these mistakes when you go there. Normally people make like top 10 mistake lists, but I'm gonna actually go for 12 because Disneyland Paris's birthday is on the 12th of April, and to be honest I've got 12 different points to make, so we're gonna have to go for 12. Okay, so let's just start right in. So the number one mistake that people make happens before they've even gone to Disneyland Paris. Now this is something that you can avoid making as you're planning your trip to Disneyland Paris, and this is to not check what attractions are going to be down for refurbishment when you're going to be going. This is information that is easily accessible for anyone. You can find all this information on the actual Disneyland Paris official website. A lot of the fan pages also put out information like this about the attractions that are going under renovation. So by doing so, by checking in advance before you book your holiday, you can avoid disappointment. So if there's a particular ride that you really want to go on, you can find out in advance whether or not it's going to be available to you on the particular dates that you're hoping to go. And if it's not, you can change it and go another time. You know, you have to try and prioritize the rides that you really want to go on and make sure that you go when that ride will be on. I mean, there's never a guarantee, to be fair, because even if every ride is meant to be open, there's always a chance that you might just get unlucky, and in the few days that you happen to be in Disneyland Paris, one of the rides might just have a problem and might be down randomly. But you can really minimize your chances of not being able to go on your favorite rides by checking in advance. So that's the number one mistake not to make. Number two, this mistake is, again, I feel like very easily avoidable, and it's to be unprepared for the weather before your visit. Now again, this is something that is easily checkable. I know that weather predictions aren't always right, but you know, they give you a pretty good indication of what the weather's going to be like. So for instance, if you really hate cold weather, then definitely don't travel in the winter months. If you hate the heat, I would personally make sure not to visit during the summer months because it can actually get really hot in Paris as well. So yeah, just be prepared for the weather, know what you're in for. Like Marne-la-Vallée, where Disneyland Paris is based, is one of those places where it has almost every season. So it's nice and cool in the springtime, then it can get pretty hot during the summer, and autumn can be quite cool and actually kind of cold towards the later months, and winter time can be very cold, and it can snow and it can rain. As long as you're aware of what you're in for, you should be fine, because then you can bring appropriate clothing. So make sure you do that. The third mistake to avoid at Disneyland Paris is eating at the closest place that you just find. That is such a common mistake. I see so many people do it. Even some of my own friends, when they visited on the first visit, they made these mistakes, and they would then come back to me and say, oh Sam, we wish we hadn't done this. And I'd be like, yeah, you know, I could have told you. Never ever just settle for the first restaurant that you see. I know that it can be tempting, like you're in the parks, you're hungry, and you just see a restaurant, you're like, I'm gonna go there. This is a mistake. This can cause so many disappointments for you that could have easily been avoided. The amount of people that I see eat at the Studio One restaurant in Disneyland Paris, in the studios, or Cafe Hyperion in Discoveryland, like these two are two of my least favorite quick service places in Disneyland Paris, and yet so many people eat at them because they're like located very conveniently, and people just go there because they think, oh, like there's a restaurant, let's just go and eat there. Don't do that. You know, just do a little bit of research either beforehand or even whilst you're in the park. Get the app out and look at what restaurants are like open, see what kind of cuisine and price each of them offers, and go there. I promise you it'll be worth it. Don't settle for the closest restaurant, because 9 times out of 10 you're going to be disappointed, and you don't need to be. Like, you know, being disappointed is going to then cause you to be probably annoyed for the rest of the day, understandably so, because you've paid for a meal that you didn't like. When you didn't need to, you could have paid for something that you would have liked. So don't make this mistake, please. The fourth mistake to avoid doing at Disneyland Paris is not using the official Disneyland Paris app. Now, the Disneyland Paris app admittedly isn't as good as the one in Florida for Walt Disney World, but it still is pretty good. It still gives you the information about queue times and whether a ride is down or not. There are also a couple of other apps that are needed quite often for visiting Disneyland Paris. For instance, Line Bertie is an app that's been used at Disneyland Paris in the past few years. This is normally used for meeting characters, so you can kind of reserve a spot so you don't have to wait for the characters, and then the app tells you what time to go back to meet that character. Recently, Disneyland Paris has been introducing some virtual queues as well. Like last year during the pandemic, during the short time that they reopened, they had a virtual queue for Big Thunder Mountain, and you could only access that through the main app. So it's good to have the app. There is free Wi-Fi throughout the parks. It's not the best Wi-Fi. Again, I'm not going to pretend it's like phenomenal Wi-Fi, and there are parts of the park where it's even worse, but for the most part, you can definitely get Wi-Fi throughout the parks, and it's worth having the apps because it makes your life a lot easier. So don't make the mistake of not downloading the apps. The fifth mistake that people make at Disneyland Paris is not using the arcade to walk through Main Street USA. Now, Disneyland Paris is very unique in the sense that it has two arcades around its Main Street area. So there's Main Street right in the middle, then we've got Liberty Arcade and Discovery Arcade surrounding it. And these arcades are undercover. They're actually really, really lovely places to walk through as well. And the best thing about them is that because they're undercover, for instance, if it's raining or snowing or if it's just really cold, you have options to use instead of just walking down Main Street USA, and you can be undercover. It will be nicer and warmer. This can work the other way around as well. For instance, in the summer months when it can get really hot in Paris, again, by using the arcades, you can avoid the sun and not feel really hot. And also, Main Street USA normally tends to be very, very busy. So another good use for the arcades is that, you know, they're normally not as busy as the Main Street USA. I remember one particular time back in 2017, my friend and I wanted to leave Disneyland Park just as the parade had started. And of course, because the parade was happening, Main Street USA was like full. People were crowded there. The floats were about to come. It was difficult to leave the park. However, we used the arcades, and you know, using the arcades meant that there was literally hardly anyone in them. So we just walked through the arcades and managed to leave the park without any problems. So do that. Use the arcades. They're also very, very nice to look at as well. I mean, I think Discovery Arcade is my favorite, but Liberty Arcade is also really nice. Make the most of them. That's literally why they were designed. The sixth mistake that you should avoid when you go to Disneyland Paris is not visiting the Disneyland Hotel for a lovely cup of hot chocolate. Now, I've made a full video about this. I've literally got a whole video on my channel called The Best Hot Chocolate That You Can Find at Disneyland Paris, and lo and behold, this hot chocolate is in the Disneyland Hotel in Cafe Fantasia. And a lot of people don't realize that anyone can access the cafes and restaurants in the different hotels. Even if they're not staying in a Disney hotel themselves, people can still go to the different hotels, the different resorts, and go and eat at their restaurants or cafes if they want to. For me, the Disneyland Hotel is one of the best places to visit, and like I said, Cafe Fantasia is one of my favorite places in Disneyland Paris, and they do genuinely make some of the best hot chocolate I've ever had. And it's just a very nice and relaxing area, really close to the parks as well, especially the main park. It's a nice place to go and sit down for a bit. You know, it gives you some time to just rest, like take a bit of time out. I would recommend going there maybe for like an afternoon snack if you don't want to spend that crazy, really busy time in the parks. Fun fact, I actually have a favorite sofa in the Disneyland Hotel because there was this particular sofa that I used to always go to and just sit on it for a while, maybe like half an hour or so whenever I needed a bit of a break from the craziness of the park. One time in particular, I remember, this must have been in like 2014 or 15. I was there with my aunt and cousin, and this might be a little bit TMI, but it was my time of the month and I was having some really, really bad cramps. Normally I get really bad cramps on my first day, and I just wasn't feeling very well. Like I didn't feel well enough to be in the park. So instead of just writing the whole day off and going back to my hotel and not doing anything that day, I told my aunt and cousin that I was just gonna take a bit of time off, and I went to the Disneyland Hotel, sat on my favorite sofa for like 45 minutes. I think I might have actually even napped a little bit because I was really tired as well. Took a couple of pills, you know, sat there until I felt better, and within about an hour I was fine. And yeah, I went and joined them again, and it meant that I didn't waste the whole day because I wasn't feeling very well. So yeah, definitely worth making the use of not just the Disneyland Hotel but all the resorts and, you know, their facilities. Number 7, and this is something that I don't know if it's going to still apply because by the time I'm filming this we are in a pandemic and things aren't operating the way they used to. As we're speaking right now, fast passes aren't a thing right now in Disneyland Paris. However, hopefully they will return at some point, and this mistake is that a lot of people don't realize that they actually are allowed to have more than one fast pass at the same time. This is such a common mistake, like probably the biggest mistake that I see in first-time Disneyland Paris visitors, and even regular Disneyland Paris visitors, some of them don't know this. It's a big misconception that you only can have one fast pass at a time in Disneyland Paris. It does depend obviously on the actual fast pass, but I'll try and give you some examples on the screen right now. So whenever you do get a fast pass for any particular ride that offers fast passes, the little paper ticket will tell you a time, a particular time to go back for that ride to be able to ride it, and it also has a little written bit underneath it that says you're allowed to get your next fast pass after this particular time. Now sometimes that time can be the same time as when your fast pass ticket is for, but there are times when you're actually allowed to get another fast pass earlier than when your fast pass happens, you know what I mean? So normally what happens is that you need to wait at least 2 hours before you can get another fast pass. But for instance, if you get a fast pass at maybe 11 o'clock for Peter Pan's flight, and the actual return time for your Peter Pan's flight ride is maybe be 3 p.m. Because you got the fast pass at 11 o'clock, after 2 hours, you would be able to get another fast pass for another attraction, even though you haven't actually done the ride yet. So at 1 p.m, you can get yourself another fast pass, even though, you know, your actual Peter Pan's flight fast pass hasn't happened yet and isn't until about 3 p.m. So it's always good to check the actual ticket and read what time you can get another fast pass, because this can easily save you a bit of time, and time is always very, very precious at Disneyland. The next mistake that a lot of people again do at Disneyland Paris is to rope drop Crush's Coaster. No, honestly, like, this is a piece of advice that I completely disagree with. So many people would tell you, oh, if you want to get on Crush's Coaster, you need to get there at the very beginning of the day, like as soon as the studios parks open, you need to be there, you need to run to Crush, and that's the only way you're going to be able to get on this ride. This is a mistake. Now, don't get me wrong, this can sometimes work, you might be lucky, but quite often by the time you've actually got there, a lot of other people have done the same thing because everyone's had the same idea. So it really doesn't make any difference. Even if you get there right at the beginning of the day, you'll find that by the time you get to Crush's Coaster, the queue is already like 45 minutes or 50 minutes long, maybe even longer. My advice for Crush's Coaster is to do it at the end of the day. Again, this is something that has been done and tested quite a few times by myself. Normally speaking, at the end of a park day at Walt Disney Studios, if you go to Crush's Coaster, you will find that the queues are a lot shorter than they've been throughout the whole day, including at the very beginning of the day. So if you're willing to wait a little bit longer, I would say that 9 times out of 10, going at the end of the day to Crush's Coaster will save you a bit of time and will give you much, much shorter queues as well. Walt Disney Studios normally closes before Disneyland Park as well, so in the winter months, normally it closes at around 6 p.m, so it's not even that late. Even for kids, I think that's pretty manageable. And again, something that a lot of Disneyland Paris fans don't know is that even if you get into a queue of a ride a minute before the park is meant to close, you're still allowed to ride that ride. So I think that's actually why Crush's Coaster is normally very, very quiet at the end of the day, because a lot of people would have left the park by then because they would have thought, oh, well, the park is closing, so we should probably leave. And there's a lot fewer people wanting to go on Crush's Coaster, and I've had times where I've had to only wait about 5 or 10 minutes when I've gone at the end of the day. And so I would say this method works way better than rope dropping Crush. There are so many articles that would tell you to rope drop Crush, but I would say they're all wrong. My method has been proven to work better, at least for me. Again, there will always be exceptions, but I personally do believe that rope dropping Crush is a big mistake and a waste of your time, because you're getting to studios early for literally no reason apart from disappointment. The 9th mistake to avoid in Disneyland Paris is leaving the parks after the parade. Everybody else is going to do that, which means you're going to have a very difficult journey out of the parks, because most people want to stay for that parade. The parade normally happens at 5 o'clock. Again, obviously because of COVID, things are a bit different now, but whatever time the parade happens, most families want to stay for it and they watch the parade, and as soon as that's over, that's when most people think, oh, let's have a bit of a break now. So that's when they decide to leave the park. Do not do that. Do not follow the crowd. This is the prime time to do a lot of rides in Disneyland Paris, because normally most rides have very, very short queues just after the parade. I mean, if you go during the parade, that's even better, but just after the parade, like just before evening time, a lot of rides end up having shorter queues. And not only will this mean that you can, you know, go on a lot of rides, it also means that you're not going to be in the middle of a bunch of people, like loads of people trying to leave a park at the same time. That is so stressful, that is so unnecessary. You don't need that in your life, so don't make that mistake. The 10th mistake that people do at Disneyland Paris is skipping the walkthrough attraction. Disneyland Paris is known for having a lot of walkthrough attractions, and what is good about walkthrough attractions is that they normally don't require a lot of queuing. Even during really, really busy times, you can normally go into these walkthrough attractions without too much of a wait and enjoy them. And yes, they might not necessarily be as exciting as the proper attractions or the proper rides, but I promise you they are still worth a look. And especially if it's your first time, or if you haven't been to Disneyland Paris in a while, they're worth going through. Go and experience them when it's really hot outside, or if it's raining, or if it's just very, very busy and every other ride seems to have very long queues. That is the prime time to go and have a look at the Aladdin's Passageway. You know, it's a short attraction. You're probably not going to be spending too much time in them, but it gives you something to do whilst you wait for other things to calm down a bit. Same with the dragon, you know, in the castle. You can go and have a look at the dragon. You can literally go up the castle itself. It's a beautiful experience. You can look at the walls, you can look at all the beautiful scenery and the stained glass. That is a walkthrough attraction. Or Nautilus, for instance, in Discoveryland, or even Alice's Labyrinth. I mean, to be fair, with that one, you do kind of want the weather to be nice, but again, even that is a good option of things to do when it's very, very busy, because you're just walking at the end of the day, so it's not going to be as busy as any other ride. The 11th mistake that I think a lot of people make at Disneyland Paris is not meeting at least one character. Now I understand that for a lot of people meeting characters isn't really their thing. I get it, you know, this is more of a personal thing for me, but Disneyland Paris is literally known for having some of the best character interactions, and I think personally that it would be a shame to not at least try and meet one character. Even if you've met characters before in Disney World or California, give it a try in Disneyland Paris, because normally the interactions are much better in Disneyland Paris, and normally Disneyland Paris also has better characters. Like, a lot of rare characters that can't really be seen in the American parks are more readily available in Disneyland Paris. I mean, one example of that is Pinocchio. I found out a few years ago that apparently Pinocchio is now considered a long lost friend in the American parks, and that just means that he's very rare. Like, he very rarely comes out. He only comes out at ticketed events or special occasions, whereas in Disneyland Paris you can meet Pinocchio very easily. So I would say just choose one character, just one, and give it a go. I promise it will make the whole trip a little bit more magical for you. Don't feel awkward, just do it. I genuinely think that it's a mistake not doing this, because it's part of the Disney experience. Just meeting one character, that's all I ask of you.
That's all I ask of.
And finally, the 12th mistake that people do at Disneyland Paris is that they expect cast members to be exactly like American cast members and to have an American attitude. Newsflash, you're not in America, you're in France, and the French culture brings a certain charm and character to the park, so learn to appreciate it and learn to expect it before you visit the park. Stop expecting everything to be exactly like the American parks, because you're not in America, right? You're in France, and if you put just a little bit of effort with the cast members in Disneyland Paris, they can be some of the friendliest and best cast members you have ever seen. Like, honestly, personally speaking, I have had way better interactions with cast members in Disneyland Paris than I have in Florida. Now, granted, I've been to Disneyland Paris more times than I've been to Walt Disney World, but when I go to Walt Disney World, normally I stay for about a week, and I have now been to the Walt Disney World quite a few times, so I've had enough time to experience both sets of cast members, and honestly speaking, they're both great. I do not understand when people say Disney World cast members are better than Disneyland Paris cast members. That is genuinely not true. It's just a different way of doing things, okay? And if you realize this, if you understand this, if you understand culture and stop living in that kind of everything has to work in your way bubble, you won't be disappointed when you go to Disneyland Paris, because you'll realize that it's just ridiculous to expect American customer service from French cast members. That just doesn't make sense, okay? I find it really weird that people complain so much about Disneyland Paris's cast members when it's literally the same in the Asian parks as well. Like, I've been lucky enough to have gone to Hong Kong Disneyland as well as Shanghai Disneyland, so I've experienced cast members in different parts of the world, and I've loved them all. They've all been fantastic, but I promise you, the Asian cast members in Shanghai or Hong Kong also aren't like the ones in America. Like, I don't think you can expect someone in Hong Kong Disneyland to be like, "Hello, princess, have a wonderful day." They're just not gonna say that to you, because they're not American. They're not gonna give you that kind of customer service. That's a very American way of doing things. So why is it that it's okay in other international Disney parks, but apparently not okay in Disneyland Paris? You need to embrace the French culture when you go to Disneyland Paris, and if you don't do that, you will be disappointed, and it's literally your own fault. It's their park, it's their country, they can do whatever customer service they want to. Most French people don't actually like that kind of extreme Americanized customer service, so they've adapted to their way of doing things. It doesn't mean they're not friendly, it doesn't mean they're not as good as the ones in America, it just means they're doing it their own way. And like I said, if you just put a bit of effort, even if you just say bonjour to them, like, show some respect to them, you will get a lot of respect and, you know, friendliness back. So stop expecting French people to act American, because that is just so self-entitled and arrogant and a bit ignorant as well. And if you don't make this mistake, I promise you that you will have an overall much more enjoyable time in Disneyland Paris. And that's it. These were my 12 mistakes that I've seen happen the most at Disneyland Paris. Now, of course, there are some very, very basic mistakes, like make sure you wear the right footwear or make sure you watch the parades and fireworks, but I feel like those are just a given. Most Disney fans know, you know, that they need to do that they need to wear comfortable clothing, and that Disney is more than just a ride. So the 12 mistakes that I just listed are mainly for people who already know a little bit about Disney parks and just don't know enough about Disneyland Paris. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something. Feel free to leave comments down below with your own tips or mistakes that you've noticed people make in Disneyland Paris, because the more tips, the more helpful it can be for anyone watching this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to follow me on Instagram, you can. All my details are available in the link below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!